Hey guys, my name is Kayla Peck. I work for BLDD Architects and I have been helping the New Berlin School District with their facilities planning and community engagement. This recording is a recap of all the information provided at the first community engagement session. Please take the time to review our district and the existing facilities at the junior and senior high. All of these subjects will continue to come up at our future engagement sessions. Our second session will begin Division for the Future and is coming up soon on October 16th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. You can join us at the Junior Senior High cafeteria and can come by 8:30 for some light breakfast before we start the presentation at 9. So let's first begin with why we are here. Jill Larson, the superintendent for the New Berlin School District, has been working with her team and the board to create a strategic plan for the 2021 to 2024 school years. There are 5 goals overall. First off, the district has been working hard to produce a strong relationship with their community. Overall, our referendum has been pushed to the March of 2022 elections, which was actually pushed to June of 2022 due to the census, so that we could ensure enough time to be transparent, honest, and able to get as many community members to the table as possible. We want to make sure you have the knowledge and the say in what you're voting for, making these upcoming sessions extremely important to attend. As we've taken a deeper look at the junior and senior high, we quickly realized there's a lot of work required and will require a proper facility plan that is layered and continues to prepare us for the future. With all of that, facility improvements don't come without a price. Overall, the district has been very fiscally responsible and wants to continue to do so. Anything we plan for our facility has to be affordable. And if there is any form of increase for the taxpayers need to know what that's going to be and why we are asking for it. I know that one of Jill's personal goals is to make sure every student is successful, so much so that they find comfort in coming back to our community to settle down and raise their own kids here. To ensure success, the district has been focusing on curriculum improvements, social and emotional learning, how to support students through COVID, but also asking how our facilities can further support the student. One fairly important way to support the student is to recruit and retain quality personnel, which can be fairly hard since Illinois has a teacher shortage. However, the New Berlin School District has been fairly successful and competitive when it comes to hiring more experienced teachers. And in June, approved 3-year contracts with higher percentages in pay and benefits to make sure we continue to hire quality staff. So those were the 5 goals for the New Berlin School District. Many goals have already seen improvements, like I just discussed, on staff pay and benefits. But 2 goals, our facilities and community engagement, needed some outside help. So New Berlin asked Rod Wright with Creative Entourage to help improve community engagement and asked us at BLDD to help with facilities planning process. Who are we at BLDD Architects? Overall, we are roughly a 60-person firm that started in Decatur in 1929. Our first projects were schools in Decatur and Maroa. We typically design about 6 major schools a year and service over 70 schools districts in Illinois, including Pleasant Plains, Williamsville, Athens, Jacksonville, Rochester, Delavan, Springfield, Decatur, and Maroa Forsyth, and are a top 25 educational design firm in the United States. We have offices in Iowa, Chicago, Bloomington, Champaign, and Springfield, and employees in Tennessee and North Dakota. We believe that architecture is the creation of physical spaces in the world to allow people to live, learn, work, worship, and enjoy. As I've mentioned, we have been in business for 92 years and have spent the past 30 years helping communities realize their potential, and the best way to do that is through community engagement. We are at our best collaborative states when we can get people in the community to talk to each other about their future, as opposed to myself, the superintendent, or board attempting to come up with it on their own. Our ultimate goal is to come up with a plan that is a reflection of the community and where they want to go. So to achieve this, we developed a specific process that allows the community to very quickly have the expertise and knowledge to make informed decisions. Overall, the process is simple and is going to build on itself. First off, it's important to know where we are now before we can get to understand where we want to go. For some of you, it may have been a year since you've entered the New Berlin Junior and Senior High. So what condition is it in today? That's the question we're covering in this session, so our next session can begin to dive into the fun part, visioning for the future. I wanted to note that throughout this process, we have had a task force helping us along the way. This task force is compiled of community members and district reps that have done a lot of work to help us better understand what is important to the community. Our task force has taken an extensive look at our facility and community to begin discussions for long-term facility planning and have helped program our 4 community engagement sessions. While we have made headway towards a solution, I want to emphasize that decisions about the facility plan will be made at our community engagement sessions, starting with this one. This one will mostly be background and existing information, but important to get your reactions so we can understand what's important and start the discussions that will continue into our brainstorming activities in community engagement sessions 2 through 4. So I'm going to give you a little history about the facility so you can acclimate yourselves with the building. First off, the student population has seen steady and stable growth for the past 5 years. It is not necessarily booming as once predicted. However, we understand there is possibilities of developments on the west side of Springfield and know that a new facility may attract new population and will be something that we continue to monitor. So how about the facility? First off, there have been no major construction since 1970, and since then we have been continually arranging the spaces to attempt to accommodate modern programs, leading to many spaces shrinking, relocating, or being fairly non-existent. There's a lot of things we do differently since 1919, not only including academics. With the 1919 original building sitting roughly 4 to 5 feet taller than the rest of the additions, the southwest area has been dubbed the Hill and can be cumbersome for anyone trying to access the first floor amenities in this area. Not only that, but this area has a second floor that used to include classroom space that cannot be used due to accessibility issues. The 1939 area includes the multi-purpose room and library. The stage in this area is out of commission and its auxiliary spaces are used as a football locker room since we don't have enough locker room space near the dome. The southeast portion of the building hosts most of the high school classroom areas. This is also where the main office is situated in the 1954 portion of the building. While this is the newest portion of the building, we deal with a lot of functionality issues here. As we said, the locker rooms cannot accommodate the current programs. The junior high classrooms are oddly shaped and do not accommodate a typical classroom layout, therefore giving a lot of unused spaces. And the cafeteria is not large enough to host the current student population. So to get a better idea of what our facility needs and how much it will cost, we need to get to know the existing conditions. To start with, I'm going to take you through a variety of assessments that BLDD performed alongside the task force. A physical needs assessment, or P&A, looks to identify physical deficiencies in the building components such as building envelope, mechanical, site issues, and general code requirements. We can then set up quantities and costs for those components to know what it would take to get the building fully functioning back to the year it was constructed or had major remodels. It does not necessarily improve everything functionally, but covers the basic needs a building should provide. The last major construction of this building was in 1970, with various interior remodels in between now and then. Overall, there are a lot of components that require major updates or replacements due to their age. The southern half of the building has most of the high school classrooms, the library, multi-purpose room, and band and choir. Within this area, there are a lot of roofing issues, bad accessibility and troubling equipment, poor functioning window units with outdated heating equipment, asbestos flooring popping up, and hardware that is not up to code.
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing.
So that was a video showing the leaking roof in the library area. While it was raining hard that day, this was not an unordinary storm that a roof shouldn't be able to protect. As you can see from the collection bins, this is happening throughout the building. So while corridor congestion is not something PNA covers, this is one of the many poorly functioning areas we noticed as we were walking the building during our physical needs assessment. And as we move forward, I want to note that this is not necessarily about the corridors being too small. If you noticed, many students are congregating in this area waiting for the day to start. They have no form of breakout or commons areas where they can step aside from the actual circulation areas. With that being said, there are some key takeaways that I want you to keep in mind. PNA gives us a great idea of what it will take to fix what we have, but only basing future improvements on PNA can sometimes lead you down the wrong road. For example, if we only improved PNA components, you will be fixing a roof for a building that has poor functioning, congested corridors. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So, to go a step further than PNA, our functional assessment asks if our building not only functions well as a typical building, but functions as a proper educational environment that accommodates our students of today and tomorrow. This assessment was created by the Association for Learning Environments and is set up to allow our school staff to grade their own facility with the guidance from us at BLDD. In the upcoming slides, I'm going to flip through a series of photos that will first show you an example of our work at BLDD and some of the functions of that space. The second slide will then show you the comparable space in New Berlin's existing facility to give you an idea as to why we graded it the way we did. The text on the slides are verbatim questions pulled from our functional performance assessment, which is the spreadsheet shown on this slide. There are 96 questions overall that fit into 6 sections. Those sections are 1. Site, 2. Structural, electrical, mechanical, 3. Plant maintainability, 4. Building safety and security, 5. Educational adequacy, and 6. Educational environment. They were then graded from A to F. A being a space that accommodates current and future programs, on down to F being a space that fails to meet the goal of the question. The upcoming slides are just a snippet of what we reviewed. Jacksonville Middle School had issues surrounding security. For their new design, they wanted to pay special attention to fix their chaotic drop-off, pickup, and gathering areas so that they could ensure students had a safe and secure travel to and from the school. They also enhanced security at all main and event entries. The main entrances at this facility are towards the back of the building and can be hard to find, but those aren't even the biggest concerns of its users. Think back to the video when we showed the crowded corridor. There were exterior doors besides those students. Those doors are not set up as secure entries, let alone have any form of door access controls that would allow admin to control locking capabilities or to be notified if the door has been propped open. If I counted it right, there are 37 exterior doors overall, with only 3 of them having modern security effects applied. This is at Meridian High School, which is actually the school I went to. I unfortunately graduated right when they were breaking ground in construction, but did come back to visit their facilities and this theater. This theater is not only providing a performance space, but can allow for presentation space, and the seating section in the far back can be reconfigured to accommodate other group activities. Being a drama kid myself throughout school, I dealt with a performance area exactly like your stage in the multi-purpose room. Due to old or missing equipment, we cannot actually use this space for presentations, let alone for any form of performances. And due to the poor heating and cooling of the space, students tend to dread having any activities in this space at all. Moving on to the Mohammed Seymour Media Center. This space not only provides spaces for research and media learning, but also has roofs that are sound and weather tight. Our library has moved multiple times to accommodate more classrooms. It's now dwindled down in size and shares a room with a computer lab, and no longer accommodates the clubs that it used to host. This is also the area where we saw the video of the leaking roof. This is another classroom in Delavan. It has appropriate technology for teaching and learning and flexible furniture so the space can be reconfigured for other types of work. The photo below shows a classroom in the 1950s portion of the building. Not only is technology and furniture outdated, but the asbestos flooring in this area has been hard to maintain. Moving on to Tri-Valley, the corridors in Tri-Valley not only provide proper traffic flow, but are also used to break out spaces during class. We added skylights to the existing structure to provide adequate light sources to this space. The New Berlin corridors are long, winding, and typically congested, but students aren't only dealing with noise and congestion. Due to poor layout of spaces, 6th graders, our 11-year-old students, not only have to learn the ropes to junior high, but have to take on other intimidations like navigating around high schoolers in crowded corridors. The cafeteria in Tri-Valley was remodeled so it and the kitchen had sufficient space for dining and food preparation. Acoustic panels on the roof deck keep the space inviting and calm. Our cafeteria cannot accommodate the amount of students that New Berlin has. Pair this overcrowding with the noise of the mechanical equipment, no acoustics treatment, and tight kitchen, and decide if this space properly functions for food services. And we actually hosted this presentation in this space and attempted to record it so that you can hear verbatim what we spoke about that night. However, due to the equipment and noises and reverberations, I could not create a proper recording with all of the background noise. With those considerations and plenty more, the New Berlin Junior Senior High School was graded on an overall performance of 39%, just above 30%, which is a building considered inadequate for education and that should be taken offline. So we wanted to get a better idea as to why the New Berlin representatives graded their facility the way they did in the functional assessment. Plus, get further input from additional teachers in the elementary and junior senior high. Most challenges they have with the building came down to building spaces and building components. In general, most of the issues covering building components were also issues covered in P&A that I spoke about earlier. What I'd like to focus on now are the building spaces the teachers spoke about. First up, if we spoke using broad data points and compared the amount of students you have to the amount of square footage you have, our calculations would claim that the existing building has plenty of space for a modern schools program. So why is it that 68% of this pie chart is asking for more space in one form or another? To better understand what we were lacking in space, we did a space utilization study to see how many students used a space for each period of the day. This gives us an idea of what specific spaces were too large or too small. To see if the spaces were crowded or underutilized, we compared the numbers of students to the allowable capacity of that space. To calculate the capacity of a space, we took the net square footage and divided it by a loading factor that's set by the Illinois Board of Education. Overall, what we found were spaces of congregation, collaboration, and athletics, such as the cafeteria, gym, and multi-purpose room, were crowded throughout the day. This issue only exacerbated as COVID regulations on spacing came into effect. There was nothing flexible within those spaces to help retrofit a space for those temporary unplanned needs, leaving some spaces overcrowded with no room to expand or open towards additional uses due to their confined layout. I do want to remind you that numbers can't tell us everything. Overall, most classroom spaces say they have optimal capacity. However, there have been multiple conversations during our task force meetings about the junior high classrooms. While the net square footage of this space should provide optimal utilization, the irregular shape of the classroom shrinks the usable education space. And even spaces that have better layouts and square footage can still provide poor environments, as we discussed in our functional assessment. Even if we could provide the right size for the right space, the general layout of the building can be complicated and was another item of discussion. This is a floor plan showing how spaces are laid out throughout the building. To walk you through the spaces, I'm going to give you some examples as to how they're used throughout the day. First off, junior high students utilize the library and computer lab the most, yet are placed the furthest away from it. High schoolers and junior high students typically go to the dome for gym or at least the locker rooms, but also sometimes use the multi-purpose room and weight room that are in opposite directions. Due to sizes of classrooms, some high schoolers have classes near the junior high wing, and some junior high students have classes in the high school wing. Main offices for the junior and senior high are correctly located near their corresponding classroom wings, but do not provide easy circulation to each other, not to mention the other offices that are scattered elsewhere. Overall, it's hard to argue this building is utilizing its space efficiently, and while I know you guys love your pretzels, I would say a pretzel-shaped circulation isn't the best for our school. The final item teachers discussed was the poor educational environment. What was most mentioned from teachers were noisy equipment, thin walls, and minimal or no natural light in some spaces. The key takeaway to all this is that the junior-senior high school needs work, and more so than just general upkeep. It's time to get our facility to function for our students of today and tomorrow. So, the facility could use some work, but how do we finance it? First off, there are three main sources to school financing: grants, sales taxes, and property taxes. Our task force has pushed us to extensively research grants for funding, but we have found none that will be viable to take on our needs for the updating the facility. To go into detail, the Capital Development Board had a facilities grant program for the state of Illinois that started in 1998, but suspended funding in 2004. New Berlin was on the list for 2006, but it obviously didn't happen. In 2019, the state of Illinois said they needed to start over. So they began maintenance grants that, up to a certain dollar amount, they would match what the school is paying for maintenance projects. Those were the grants that helped with projects around the elementary. Note that overall it was mostly paid by the school, but they did receive a little help from that grant. So it's not to say that we aren't taking advantage of what we can receive when it comes to grants. They're just not available or hefty enough to support our needs to the junior-senior high school. So how about the sales tax? So back in 2018, Sangamon County put the County Schools Facilities Sales Tax, or CSFST, on the ballot and passed. In Morgan County, it passed in 2012, so we have been receiving funding since 2012 for the small handful of students that live in Morgan County. This sales tax is always based on enrollment, and every student brings in a certain amount of funding monthly. Overall, last year, we received roughly $700,000 in this form of funding, and we can bond against that up to 80%. You have to keep 20% in hold just in case. So we have been utilizing this funding and calculating future funding to see how that can help with our current facilities. However, overall, the majority of funding for schools in the state of Illinois is by property taxes. So we wanted to give you some in-depth details about our property taxes. First off, who's paying the taxes? For us, our biggest contributors are residential and farm taxpayers. We understand that the biggest burden is coming from our community, which is why we will continue to invite you to all of our engagement sessions. So now, where does the money go? While the school district is the biggest benefactor, there are many other places that it's going to in and around our community. Note that this specific breakdown is from a New Berlin residential taxpayer. But if you're not in New Berlin and would like to know yours, you can see the specific tax breakdowns by going online to the website listed at the bottom of this page. How does the school district use it? Obviously, the largest portion goes towards educational needs for the students. And then maintaining our facilities and buildings and paying off outstanding bonds are the second largest portions of that tax dollar being used. Note that New Berlin promised and continues to pay off bonds to the elementary as quickly as possible. Our final question you may ask is how we compared to other schools. These schools shown are from Menard, Sangamon, and Morgan counties. All three of these counties are under tax caps, meaning it's very difficult to get the rate any higher than where we are now without community approval. Why some of these schools are so high is due to approval of educational referendums that got voter approval. So the key takeaway is that property taxes are the most reliable, accessible, and flexible type of funding for updating the New Berlin junior and senior high school. That was a lot to take in and can be disheartening, but there's a few things that we want you to remember. What I want you all to remember is that our students and staff continue to do amazing things to this day, and I want to remind you of just some of those things that we excel at. There are roughly 13 staff members shared among the junior and senior high to remain highly efficient. With the task force, we did review an idea where we split the junior and senior high schools into individual buildings. However, the added square footage to double program spaces and to double some of the staff led to a fairly higher increase in operational costs. So, under the task force's direction, we have ditched those types of facilities to ensure we continue to be a highly efficient school district. We still have certain clubs and programs like FACS and agricultural programs that not all small schools can hold on to, not to mention a continuation of programs growth such as STEM. These programs include other events like the New Berlin Art Show that we have been hosting since the late 1960s at the Sangamon County Fairgrounds. And our student athletes and co-ops are known throughout the state. Baseball and softball just recently won regionals, and our cheerleaders continue to be some of the best athletes throughout the state. So think of what we could do with a facility that supports us. So that question is just one of the subjects that we will dive into at our next meeting, Community Engagement Session number 2, as we vision for the future. And as I said at the beginning, our next session will be on Saturday, October 16th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. with breakfast being served at 8:30 a.m. We will be in the cafeteria of the junior and senior high school. Be sure to bring your thinking caps as you, the community, begin to vision for the future. Thank you for listening, and I can't wait to see you there.